Hi, I'm David Crombie, the CEO of EAC, and today we're here to talk with Lisa B from the Real Estate Hotline and Nathan Waters. Nathan's a futurist, entrepreneur and consultant, founder of Peerism, a blockchain-based economic protocol which aims to solve job automation and wealth inequality via skill tokens. He also started and organises Sydney Ethereum, one of the largest Ethereum meetups in the world. The reason why we're talking with Lisa and Nathan today at EAC, we like to look out into the future. We like to look at the issues that our members are going to face, and by us understanding them, we are able to provide the necessary tools and knowledge for the agents to meet these changes. So welcome Lisa and Nathan.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
So in recent times we've seen agencies coming out and they're starting to promote the listing of property with the payment via Bitcoin. I think very early days from a real estate perspective, and Lisa's got a recent interest in Bitcoin, so I've invited Lisa in to ask Nathan some questions about Bitcoin and how it's all going to work.
Thank you. I actually know nothing about Bitcoin, and this is why I'm here, because you've got to talk to me like I'm a 10-year-old and I know nothing. So I guess, as David said, some of the real estates are now advertising properties in Bitcoin, and you're getting some vendors requesting it. So how do you actually buy a property with Bitcoin? And off camera we were talking a little bit about the problems that we don't know about yet. So firstly, I just want to know, how do you buy a property with Bitcoin? How do you sell one with Bitcoin?
So Bitcoin is really just like any other currency, but it's just more volatile at the moment. So the way you would probably do it right now, without all the rules and regulations in place that probably need to be in place, is you would basically just say, okay, I'm willing to sell my property for, say, $1 million Australian. And you would then say that I'm willing to accept $1 million in Bitcoin. And considering right now Bitcoin is floating at, I think, like $24,000 Australian per coin, which is just madness. So you would, what does that work out? Like 50 Bitcoin or something like that.
So you have to change the price each time when it fluctuates.
Yeah, because you couldn't really advertise in Bitcoin, could you?
So we're discussing that before. So you probably wouldn't want to do that because the price is so volatile. I mean, like, I think at the start of this year it was like $1,000 for Bitcoin in US. So you would definitely want to like advertise in whatever fiat currency, like US dollars or Australian dollars, and then just say if you're willing to pay for it in Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency. There's literally thousands of cryptocurrencies out there now. Ethereum, Monero, Dash, all these other ones. So you would just say, okay, I'm willing to sell for this much, and if someone comes to you and says, yes, I actually want to buy it in Bitcoin, probably what you would do right now is you would, just to avoid all the current like legal system and tax system and all the mess that nobody knows what's happening yet. The way you would do it is you say, okay, well, send me 50 Bitcoin to this wallet address, and wallet addresses are these like long hashes, which are kind of like your bank account, but they're like a universal bank account. And so you can send the Bitcoins to that person's address, and then if they confirm that it's being transferred, then essentially the transaction's been made. And the way you would probably do it to ensure that nobody gets screwed over in that situation right now is you would have some type of, maybe an escrow middleman, even though the
like in trust kind of thing, like we do as a stakeholder. Kind
of like you would probably do it as a very centralized escrow service where you maybe have
That's a market.
But the thing is that can be automated. The whole point of blockchain, and we can get into that, the whole point of blockchain is to get rid of that entire process. But the way you do it now,
so there is no middleman.
The whole point of blockchain is to get rid of the middleman entirely. So the way you could actually do it is have an escrow wallet address smart contract, and I can explain a bit later what that means, where the person buying the property transfers it into this kind of escrow account that's sitting on the blockchain, and then when the payment's been confirmed and the deed has been, the deed of the property or whatever has been confirmed, then only then does it make the transaction.
Oh, okay.
But right now you'd have to do it with like some type of agent in the middle or an escrow service in the middle.
Because we're having a discussion before. I mean, what we don't know, I can't answer what happens with trust accounts, what happens with stamp duty. I mean, they're all questions as
capital gains tax, stamp duty. If an agent's selling the property, how are they?
Commission.
Commission. Like, are they going to say, "Well, put 2 Bitcoin into my wallet for commission"? Is it going to be on exchange? Is it going to be on settlement? Because what if it exchanges at X amount and then at settlement it drops or it goes up, then they're going to have special terms and conditions in the contract about that.
Yeah, exactly.
Jamie McIntyre, I can't remember the name of his company, finance company, he's promoting his property at 475 Bitcoin or something. And I think that's, a lot of that's probably a marketing gimmick as well, because it's like, the first couple in Coronas were doing it. So that's probably a bit of a marketing new thing, but you're suggesting, like, say, have it as a price and then...
Yeah, and I guess we probably should back up a bit and explain why. So Bitcoin is really, the reason Bitcoin works and the reason it was made is it kind of, it solves a thing called the double spend problem. So if you have a digital currency with no bank in the middle, what that means is you need a system that actually tracks, how many Bitcoins one person has and how many Bitcoins another person has, so that when you send it to one person, it subtracts from their account and adds to their account. You don't want to just be able to create, these new coins out of thin air, because it wouldn't work. And that was really what Bitcoin solved for the first time, and that's why it's worked so well.
But how do you know it's going to stay like that? Like, nobody knows who created it, do they? So how do you know there is only going to be 21 or 22 million in circulation, and how do you know that there's only 16 million or 15 million in circulation? How do you actually know? So
it's actually coded that way. So this is what the whole blockchain Bitcoin movement is all about: decentralizing trust. So right now we have to trust that a bank stores our money and keeps it safe, and by trusting some entity, there's almost like a misnomer, because if you're trusting an entity, then there is kind of no trust in that system, because you're putting your trust in this third party that you have no control over. You don't know who it is, and it's not like we've gone from a society back in tribal eras where we all knew each other and we trusted each other. But now we're in a global society, we've put our trust into these third-party institutions.
How do you know these guys aren't, these big guys aren't laughing behind the scenes? Look at all these people running around doing that. How do you know that that's not happening? How do you know they're not creating this, for their own benefit? And, how do you know it?
Because Bitcoin operates on the idea of pure radical transparency. So you can actually see all the code. And really that's what miners are about. So we should discuss miners. So miners are basically people who have an economic incentive to offer up their computation. So they usually.
I'm 10, remember?
Okay. So back in the early days of Bitcoin. So I used to be able to run, back in my uni days, me and a mate, we used to be able to run our regular desktop computers and mine Bitcoins. Back when they were 50 cents a Bitcoin, we were getting about one per day. But what happens is the difficulty level went up, and so now to mine Bitcoins, you basically need to have giant server farms.
But what does it mean, mining? What do you mean?
So mining is these people basically add their computers to the network, and by doing that, it runs through these transactions and tries to secure them. So it's solving hard.
Trying to grab it. Is it? Am I sitting there trying to grab a Bitcoin from somebody?
A little bit. So
or find.
Right.
So part of what the miners do is they help secure the network by solving these hard cryptographic problems to work out what the next block is. So it's like, that's why it's blockchain. So there's like packages all these transactions together, confirms what's actually happened on the network, and then when everyone's come to an agreement, they confirm it, and then it's the next block and the next block. And in a layman's term, the way you can think of what blockchain is it's kind of like a shared ledger or a shared database or a shared record of everything that's happened. Because you need to know, if I send a Bitcoin to you, that needs to be on record so that we know, okay, your balance has changed and my balance has changed, and that transaction actually happened.
But no one person's managing that like the bank.
Yeah, and exactly, and the way you do that is by having a distributed system of thousands, tens of thousands of miners who are incentivized to offer up their computational processing speed and that grunt work to secure the network. And by doing that, they earn Bitcoins. So every couple of minutes, I think 5 minutes or something, a certain number of Bitcoins are released to whoever solves the next block. So there's an economic incentive for them to keep going and keep the system running. But all the code is open source and shared, and everyone has to agree to it for it to work.
So these people that keep private messaging people and saying, buy Bitcoin through me, they're miners, are they?
No, they're just sellers. So
okay. So they're trying to sell their Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So if you have, that's all exchanges are. So you can buy and sell Bitcoins through an exchange or directly with each other. Right. So if I know your wallet address and you send it to me, and then I can send Bitcoins directly to you, and then there's no middleman. Okay. But you can have exchanges where you can transfer your Australian dollars into Bitcoins, or you can transfer it into any other coins.
Okay.
Yeah.
So blockchain, people have said to me, blockchain's going to change the internet and all that sort of thing. How is that so? What does it mean?
So blockchain is really the underlying technology that powers Bitcoin. So everyone's talking about Bitcoin hype just because the coins are worth so much, and it's definitely a bubble. It's a huge speculative bubble because people are just seeing tons of money. But blockchain is really the technology underlying that does all this, sharing ledgers and keeping a record and keeping everything in sync in a decentralized way. So Bitcoin was only ever really designed for monetary transactions, for actually transferring just coins to each other. And really all coins are is just a little bit of information. I mean, that's all, all of our bank accounts, all of our electronic transactions these days, they're really just numbers in a database. There's nothing really tangible there. So Bitcoin's the same thing. It's just sending a little bit of information to you and saying, okay, +1 to your account, -1 to my account. So what these other protocols are now starting to do, like Ethereum, which is really awesome, is they're trying to take that same idea but apply it to basically the idea of you can create any sort of application in that system. So rather than it just doing financial transactions, now you can have it do anything you can code it to do.
Like what?
Literally anything. So it's Turing complete, meaning it can run anything. So think of like the App Store right now, like an iOS, Android App Store. Anyone can code whatever they want, deploy it, and it runs as you coded it. So what blockchain enables and what Ethereum's doing is to create decentralized apps. So you can create a little piece of code that does something, and they call these little pieces
Just like MyOp or something. Would it be something like that? Like a business is going to put it on there and run their system through it? Is that what it is? Or not? Eventually,
but at the moment, because there's certain limitations in the technology, because it's so new, it only runs at a certain pace. It can only do a certain number of transactions per second. But these are more about like decentralized apps, so they're called dApps or smart contracts. So you could have it do things like, once you create this little piece of code and you deploy it, it's always there and it will always run. And then anyone can access it because it's completely open and transparent, and you can send a little bit of ether or coin to it to help it run. It does its thing and it outputs something.
So with the blockchain, I still don't really get it. So tell me what you can actually, like what you see is going to be the future. So they say it's going to change the internet. You won't be doing it like this anymore. So how will, in 5 years, 10 years, how will my experience on the internet change that I'll be going, oh wow, what do you see?
So it's all about radical transparency, openness, and removing the middleman and creating protocols. So if you think about the internet right now, it basically runs on these protocol stacks. So whenever you go to a website address, that is behind the scenes. There's all these layers of protocols that are happening. So like www, HTTP.
So algorithms, you mean, or?
They're just protocols that kind of transport your request in a very open way that everyone can use. It's free.
So we're talking like DNS, you understand? You've got your domain name, which resolves to an IP address, and that's...
Think of all those acronyms like that we know about. www, that's World Wide Web, that's a protocol. TCP/IP, HTTP, HTTPS. These
so
are all
everything's
protocols.
going to be more transparent. Is that what you mean? Like all information, everyone's going to know everything about everybody.
But potentially. But the way I see it going is that you end up creating protocols for all of society's functions right now. So I see in the future, instead of having 10,000 insurance companies, we have a free open insurance protocol. Instead of having 10,000 real estate agencies and agents around the world, we have a single protocol. And maybe on top of that, that's where the new aspect is sitting. That's the new layer that people
are really working on. So tell me, how would it affect me as a real estate agent?
Yep.
Or the real estate industry as a whole.
Yep. So we'll go into some of those. One idea that people might get is things like Uber. So if you think of Uber right now, it's really a decentralized peer-to-peer marketplace, but there's Uber Inc. sitting in the middle. When you want to book a driver, you're going through Uber Inc. They're taking their 30% cut, when really it's just a transaction between you and the driver. So with blockchain, you can actually create a system where there is no Uber taking their 30% cut, but you can still have the exact same service, everything you expect, everything you've done with Uber before. But when you hit, get a driver, they turn up. You guys, it's secure, it's safe, the transaction occurs, but there's no fee in the middle. And there's already services out there now that offer that.
And that service is just part of the blockchain.
Yep. So they still have all your normal front end. They still have an app. So there's this thing called Arcade City which does this already. There's a bunch of others popping up. So you have your app, you have your everything you expect. But when you make it a booking, it actually goes to a smart contract or a dApp on the blockchain, it then connects to a driver, and then the payment is made without any bank, without any payment gateway provider, without any Uber Inc. or anything in the middle.
So is Google going to change? Is say realestate.com going to change? Like the programs that we deal with, how is realestate.com going to change, or domain.com going to change?
Also, so I'll just start listing off like use cases. So, so you probably all know about like RIA XML and like the listing.
RIA XML, so that's the way everyone transfers their listings.
Oh yes, sorry, yeah. Sorry.
And so obviously you typically have to pay a fee to list, I think, do you? Or is that
with realestate.com, you
do.
do.
To pay a fee, I guess.
And an increasing fee at that.
Increasing fee. So wouldn't it be great if we got rid of that? Why can't you have, and you can have with blockchain, you can have a decentralized, open, free protocol where anyone can use it without having to sign up to anything, without having to ask permission, without having to pay a fee. It's free. It's like a common good.
That's our next real estate portal. It's free to list.
Free to list, and
controlled by no one.
Yeah, controlled by no one. But as the lister, you would still have complete control over your listing. So there's still it's your listing, but you get to determine what happens with it. But it would be free to list. So
you've got your initial creator though, your person that creates it.
Yeah.
So how is that going to be different to say realestate.com?
The lister.
Yeah.
You're still creating the listing. It's just where you're putting it.
Yeah. And so if you think
you've still got to be the central source.
You've still got to go take the photography, do the videos, and put it all together. But the system you put it on won't be the existing system.
Yeah, because you think about like when you all these big services like realestate.com.au and Google and even the cloud. The cloud isn't this magical thing that is just out there. It's actually like servers owned by these giant multinational corporations that store your data and use that to mine to then sell ads back to you.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So with this we can have basically think of like RIA XML, but it's a free open protocol that is not stored on any server anywhere. It's literally stored on the blockchain itself.
So somebody will create a real estate what do you call it? Real estate
like a listing protocol or
portal, whatever, for everybody to upload their properties to.
Yeah.
Do you think that will happen?
Yeah, definitely. Because if you think of the network effects of that, RIA only operates in Australia. If you made a global open protocol that was free to list and anyone could access it and anyone could build on top of it, it becomes this new layer. So rather than having these business models that capture all the data and then take out their cut and that's their whole business model, the reason they exist, instead you demolish that. You start afresh. You start with this new base where it's okay. Now let's just put all of our property data on here openly and free, and then we'll build services on top of that so that the new business models are more about like user experience and creating something that's more valuable than just capturing data and on selling it. And then the next thing you can do on top of that is things like having all your legalese, all your legal agreements and contracts between individuals actually being embedded into that protocol as well.
Right, yeah. And so that's all safe because it's encoded.
And completely encoded. So an obvious one is having all your land titles and your property deeds and stuff like that on a blockchain, controlled by the person who actually owns it, not controlled by a third-party entity.
And released once it's okay.
So rather than having land titles owned and controlled by the government, or now they're owned and controlled by a privatized entity, which is really bad. Instead, we would have a system where every individual who owns the property actually owns their own data about the property title they have on the blockchain.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Which is really great as well for particularly nations where they actually have really a lot of troubles with actually determining that they own the property.
Yes.
If a really dodgy regime comes in and says no, now we own all the property, there's not much they can do. But if they can actually prove on a blockchain, which is because when you add data to a blockchain and you can prove that you've added that data, it's kind of like a permanent record because it can never be changed by anyone.
So do you think realestate.com and domain.com are creating this now so that then they can create the layers to upsell? What are they planning in the background? Because they're not stupid, obviously. They'd be planning for all of this. So what do you think they're doing?
Yeah. So I already know those guys, and even CoreLogic, they're all working on this already in the background. But a lot of these big companies are starting to explore. So with blockchains, there's almost two options. You can either go with private blockchains or public blockchains. So private blockchains is really all about using this technology, but having complete control over it and using it behind the scenes in your own company to automate processes, to decentralize your data, to essentially get rid of a lot of your server costs. That's where a lot of them are going, because obviously their whole business model is built around the idea of holding onto the data and profiting off of that data capture.
Everyone wants the data because they want to monetize it.
But see, this is where blockchain is like a complete disruptor to that whole notion. And the ones that will actually survive this transition will be the ones that realize that holding onto data and capturing it is not going to survive. That's an existential threat to those companies if you control and capture the data, because someone will come along and create an open protocol, a public blockchain, where all that data is now free and open. Which is fine. What these companies should be doing is realizing, oh crap, that's going to happen. So what we should do is create an open protocol, and then we should be building on top of that more services built around the idea of adding customer value, adding user experience value, rather than business models built on capturing and privatizing data.
Stealing our data and selling it back.
It's been happening
so
for
you do
years.
the same thing with that. Like, so decentralizing Facebook is another big idea. Like, Facebook owns all our data, and that makes them incredibly powerful and also dangerous in the future. Mark Zuckerberg has controlling interest in Facebook, gets to decide where it all goes. Instead, we could have an open social graph protocol where all that data is owned by us, controlled by us, and then we get to pick and choose which companies and which services we give access to our data.
All right. Okay.
Does that make sense?
No, it does. It does. So, just going back to Bitcoin, what's causing the hype at the moment, and what's going to stop it, do you think? Or is it just going to keep going?
So the Bitcoin hype is definitely driven by greed and speculation right now, because it's purely it is an artificial scarcity, because there is only ever going to be 21 million coins.
But like I said, how do you know that?
But it's coded into the actual program itself, So they could actually, the way you can change the underlying core structure and code of Bitcoin is if more than 51% of the people who mine decide to change. But there's no economic incentive for them to want to do that, because if they said, oh yeah, cool, let's just all double the supply of Bitcoin tomorrow, then obviously they halve the amount of money they have. So it's definitely a bubble, so be very careful. The dot-com bubble crashed, but there was still value being built underneath the hype, and that's it's given us the entire internet and stuff we enjoy today. So that's definitely happening. It's ignore the hype around the price and the coins and the speculation, and then look at the underlying value being created in these protocols and in these platforms. So it's all about decentralizing the web and kind of bringing power back to the individual.
So
people.
who created blockchain? Was that Bitcoin?
Yep. So that was the Satoshi Nakamoto,
who they say.
We don't know really who it is.
Could be Australian, it could be Craig Ryder, it could be some other person or group of people.
So I want to ask two questions. What are the reasons you believe it won't stick around, and what are the reasons you believe it will? Either way.
So as a futurist, I tend to think about both the positive and the negative futures of where it's all going.
That's what I want to sort of know.
So one danger with Bitcoin and the whole blockchain decentralization thing right now is that the people who are really leading the charge are the existing power structures. That the banking, the big banks, they've already got consortiums that are looking at using blockchain technology to. And
the New York Stock Exchange now is.
Yeah, they accepted Bitcoin futures. So they're going to be using obviously all the giant derivative markets to play the game on this tiny little Bitcoin market.
So that's a good sign for Bitcoin, though, isn't it?
It does take it to the mainstream and legitimize it, but it's. The problem is the original core ethos of Bitcoin was it was more of an anarcho-capitalist type role, or because they wanted to overthrow the idea of central banks controlling the issuance of money. So it has roots in wanting to take power away from these giant entities that run our society and bring it back to individuals in a more networked peer-to-peer society. But I'm seeing that being overtaken now by all these banking consortiums and corporations that are just trying to look at how they can use that technology to maintain power and automate their back ends and get rid of as much of that labor cost as possible, which is scary.
So what you've just said is that it was developed to get rid of the central banks, but really it's only being made legitimate by these very entities.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
And then even the big hype at the moment about the value of Bitcoin, like the whole value is really pegged to US dollars. Like it's only valuable to most people when they sell it, and there's an incentive. Like Bitcoin will never become the global daily use currency because its incentive is to hold. There's a thing called HODL, HODL. Like it's a weird little meme of the misspelling of holding and hoarding the coins. Because people don't want to spend it, because if you spend it this week, it might be double the price next week. So bad move. So yeah, it definitely has a potential dark future, and I think there's also the potential of the whole market, the whole bubble kind of popping at some point, and people just losing interest in it. So that's the danger. But long term, the future potential of it is it's truly profound. Like it's probably one of the most exciting and potentially world-changing technologies, but like even more so than the internet itself.
Because I mean, a lot of from what I've heard, is a lot of the people that don't want their money traced are putting it in there. So that's sort of like, that will keep it going in itself, won't it? Like, if somebody wants to transfer $50 million out of China or $50 million out of America, they don't want their bank account shut down by America. So, they're transferring it through that, aren't they? Is that enough reason that this is going to keep going? Until the government works out how to stop it.
Well, that's the beauty. The government can't stop it. And that's also the amazing thing about the blockchain and why it's revolutionary is that when you create these things, they can never be shut down. It's the same as like shutting down, piracy or shutting down BitTorrent, or like you just can't, because it's the only way you can shut down Bitcoin or blockchain is if you go around and stop every single miner in the world, and then all it would take for it to get back up again is for one person anywhere in the world with a computer to say, I'm going to start mining now. So it can never be shut down. But a lot of people love the cryptocurrency movement because they can avoid taxes, because they can create anonymous transactions and hide their currency. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's all being used for drugs and illegal activity. There is some of that as well. But I mean, the ultimate anonymous currency is cash, because it's completely untraceable. So that's still the best. Cash is still the most widely used drug money laundering system. So that argument, it doesn't really stand tall that a lot of people bring up.
And ultimately, you've got to take your cryptocurrency and convert it into cash if you're going to use it in today's society.
Ideally, in the future, we'll just be able to transfer. If you have a service that I need or a product that I need, then why do we need it? And you have crypto and I have crypto, then we can just transfer crypto, and we don't have to worry about fiat, and we don't have to pay taxes and all this other stuff. But then that brings up other issues as well, because it's like, well, taxes are good for a lot of things, like hospitals, roads, schools, general community common stuff. So if we do end up in this world where it's completely decentralized and the governments have very little power because they can't actually trace people's money to be able to tax them.
I just want to say, what about, say, the Chinese are making it difficult for people to buy here, our government's making it difficult for Chinese to buy here. So using, say, Bitcoin, if they can transfer Bitcoin from there to here, how's that? I wonder how that's going to go with the Foreign Investment Review Board and all that sort of thing as well. Well,
that's actually one of the rumours as to why the price has spiked in the last year, is because China's.
Because it's not all drug money. There's a lot of business, a lot of big business that are dealing in hundreds of millions of dollars. That and American government, they'll close down the bank accounts. You transferred $100 million out of here. You're dealing this or whatever, and they can't get that money out without them. Closing it down or whatever. So you've got all those as well. I mean, with all your different cryptocurrencies, I guess. But
and I think China's trying to kind of crack down on people taking their money out of the country. All the multimillionaires, millionaires over there. And
they have a lot of trouble getting it out of there. So this is the way they
Crypto is the way that they actually are doing it.
So we should try and find out about the Foreign Investment Review as well.
Because again, the only time that's going to become open is when it hits the title system.
So there's also lots of positive.
Okay.
It really just all about so there's a lot of people working on all sorts of amazing things. So there's the idea of just almost like removing, pretty much, if you think of anything in society where there's a concentration of power, whether that's institutional power or wealth power. Really what blockchain is trying to do is completely flatten all of that. So that ideally we want to get to we would love to get to a point in society where every single person on the planet has the exact same power as everyone else. Wealth can vary a bit, but everyone should have the same access to the same type of resources and quality of life as everyone else. And blockchain is really all about that. So it's all about even like gradually over time dissolving the idea of governments, which are very centralized.
That's what they're trying to do, get rid of government.
Yeah, there's a lot of projects. They're still having governance. So there's a difference between government and governance.
Yeah.
So we can still have everything we expect to operate and occur in society, just without 100 politicians at the top fighting over their jobs and relevance. Anything. So all corporations, their entire business models are under threat by this system, because we can dissolve all of these global entities and conglomerations into like zero profit entities that are just automated and run perfectly every time the way people expect. So there's a really cool concept if you look it up called DAO. It's called stands for decentralized autonomous organizations, and the idea is having these. Basically having an entire company and everything you expect a company to do, but no humans at all involved. It's a completely automated system of...
Is this bringing AI into play now?
Yeah, well, a lot of people actually are starting to explore running AI on a blockchain. Because, again, if you think of AI...
Explain that's artificial intelligence?
Yeah, artificial intelligence, yeah.
So the Google doing a lot of work in AI at the moment. There's a lot of the big companies doing work in AI.
But a lot of it has been shut down too. A lot of the ones that are trying to do artificial intelligence are saying, no, don't do that, apparently.
You've already got it. You've got it right there.
Yeah.
And it's called Siri.
Yeah, I know.
You've got the start of it there.
It's centralized in
Yeah.
and that's a dangerous thought. Another existential threat to humanity is that if Google does create what's called AGI, artificial general intelligence, where it just can do everything, then that's a really dangerous thing to happen, because then it means, okay, now Google owns AI, the super intelligent AI. We don't want that as a species. We want AI to be something that benefits everyone and doesn't have a company taking its cut. So that's what blockchain can do as well, is have AI actually run on the blockchain that's owned by everyone, owned by no one, and a collective resource that anyone can access.
Okay, I was just going to... Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
I've got another big question.
Oh, yeah. Well, the other thing that I really love is this idea of... So when we have driverless cars, it's pretty obvious that when you have a driverless car, you'll be able to have that car go out and make you money. So you'll be able to basically have, with your Tesla car, you'll be able to tap a button and it literally goes out and your car becomes an Uber or a Lyft driver. And it literally spends all day going up, picking up passengers, driving them somewhere, collecting a fee, and then you basically make money off your car when you...
So you drive it to work, you drive it home, but in the middle of the day...
Yeah, that'd be cool, wouldn't it?
So that's cool.
Yeah.
But then, so now what you can do with blockchain is you can have that car actually own itself. And manage itself. So because the beauty of blockchain is that anyone can fire up almost like a bank account like that. So if humans can have bank accounts, now objects can have bank accounts. So this is where Internet of Things and blockchain...
So things are not going to be traceable at all for anything?
No, they can still be traceable. But so what you could do is, a wallet address on a blockchain, so basically your Bitcoin wallet address, or Ethereum or anything else. So you could have your car have its own wallet address, its own bank account. Not with a bank, with the blockchain.
Yeah.
And it could, if it's driverless, it could actually go around and it could pick up passengers and then charge them. And then when the passengers pay the car, it goes into the car's own bank account. And from there, you can then have all these smart contracts embedded into that car to help it. It could go off and pay for its own maintenance. It could check into mechanics and get repairs. If it earns enough money, it could actually go out and start buying its own cars to add to its fleet. All these amazing things, and that's just with one example of a car. You could apply that to anything. So Internet of Things, we're going to have something like over...
So lots of ways to avoid tax as well.
Yeah. But you can have differences. You can either have complete radical transparency where everything's tracked, or you can have complete, hidden, just where it's not. But on the idea of a car owning itself, well, you could also have a house own itself. And this idea is pretty radical. So one thing I particularly don't like about property ownership is that if you own it, you kind of want to maximize profit and get more profit out of it, which is great for you, not bad, not very great for everyone else who has to pay rent and the rents go up and blah, 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 particularly the millennial generation. So if you had a house that owned itself and managed itself, and the house had its own wallet address, its own bank account, it collected its own rent, it did its own maintenance, it did its own property management, it did everything itself. It managed reputation as to who was actually the tenants inside in the house. You could have the house basically operate at zero profit. So it would only charge enough rent to maintain itself, which would be, so that means rents would drop down because the house owns itself and it's not a human wanting to get personal profits. Then there is no reason to have speculation in housing because the house doesn't care for money, because it seems to be only a human thing that is of concern. So yeah, that's a really interesting long-term scenario, which might sound crazy to a lot of people out there listening, especially the agents and property owners, but I think that's ultimately where it could go.
And each of those things you discussed with the house, the maintenance, I mean, it's all done on part of the blockchain.
Yep. And even in the interim between that, you could have, like, in that blockchain-based protocol, you could have all those things. So you could have property management mostly automated on the blockchain, particularly any type of lease agreements. So that could be directly between the landlord and the tenant through a blockchain entity. So this definitely won't replace agents and agencies altogether, but I think these will be like tools that they could use. Yeah. Although eventually, at some point, it's going to, at some point, everything that agents and agencies do today will be completely automated by blockchain technology.
Can I ask, okay, so in 10 years, 20 years' time, how do you see the real estate industry? Taking into account Bitcoin or cryptocurrency, taking into account blockchain, taking into account driverless cars, taking into account everything. Yep. How do you see the poor little real estate agents out there in their office, how are they going to be running it in 10, 20 years? And taking into account realestate.com, domain.com, taking into account all of those, what's it going to look like? What are we going to do?
It's hard to say, because like there is one scenario where absolutely everything that agents and agencies and the entire industry does today, like I can definitely see how blockchain can completely automate that.
Can just pick up somebody, take them to a house that's owned by nobody. A car that's owned by nobody to a house that's owned by nobody.
And there's bits of this technology happening already.
Yeah, and so there's if you literally go and spend like half a day, search real estate blockchain, you'll see in Google, like you'll see pages and pages of all these startups and projects and all these ideas around what can be done. And I think that's what the industry needs to start thinking about, is that, I actually think literally everything that the real estate industry does today will be completely automated at zero profit on the blockchain globally. So then the idea becomes, well, what do you value add? Imagine that that's just the reality and that's inevitable. Okay. What do you build on top of that thing?
So instead of a driverless car picking you up, I'll pick you up. What else?
Well, even like you could have, you could still have agents in a peer-to-peer model, like kind of helping facilitate that process. But I think it's more going to be the value add on top.
You've still got to create marketing for the property. You've still got to do all those sorts of things. You've still got to, have your head around how it's going to be presented, how all that's going to happen.
There's actually a lot of blockchain projects that are looking at like, if they do get to the point where it's kind of ubiquitous.
Just send a drone down and go around through the house. And
so the idea of marketing and advertising is only relevant because we have this kind of limited bandwidth to find the people that want that thing. On the blockchain, if everyone's intentions and assets and everything is completely open and known, then it would automatically know
and then there'll be the history of all the photos and videos that people have done.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Okay.
And so if you want to buy a property in the future, the way you could do it, if everyone's property is on the blockchain and everyone knows, what the properties are, the value, all the dimensions, everything about it, and who owns it, and it's all just known globally, then the way you could buy a property in the future is say to this giant open protocol, say, I'm looking for this, and instantly it says, boom, here's the ones that are available.
Alexa, I want a property, whatever, and it goes, yep.
Here's the ones that are available. These people might be interested in selling.
They own the property. There's no encumbrances on it. It's It's whatever.
And they say, I want to buy, and they say, you literally ping them. And they say, yep, cool, sounds good. Boom, and then a smart contract.
So how do we be the interceptor? How do we get in there and get that that's not going to happen? Or how do we turn this into a positive? How do we you know, at the moment we can tell people all these things might happen, and you know we're sort of ahead and top of technology. But how do we stay ahead of it that we're not put out of a job?
Well, I think in the short term, because remember the battle, like probably.
I mean, this is every industry too. This is just not real estate. This is the whole world. This is not, you know.
It's attacking every single vertical.
Yeah,
So in the short term, like, you know, a couple of years ago, it used to be like, oh no, REA is going to like take over everything. They're going to become the middleman and destroy agencies altogether. And they haven't done that yet. But now it should be like, oh crap, this blockchain thing is going to do that. But if you're ahead of the game, what should happen is that short term, I feel like all of the agencies and co-ops in Australia and around the world, they should get together and just build this open protocol so that they can free themselves from the incumbents and those big entities, those big middlemen today, free themselves, but then in the process also think about, well, once we free ourselves and create this protocol that's free, open, permissionless, anyone can use it, and it's got all these smart contracts and things built into it, then you can start thinking about, okay, well, what can we add on top of that as new value? It's almost creating a new platform for value-added experiences on top of that.
And what would that be? Don't know.
I don't know. Like the industry would be the best at identifying what that is, and it's hard to. Yeah.
Well, I mean, today one of the main roles the agent plays is that of negotiation.
Okay, but then you've got online negotiation portals.
And I think the role will become one of purely assisting people that aren't like today. I mean, tech savvy through the transaction process.
Yeah.
Yeah, so more human to human interactions, I guess. Personal interactions.
Okay, so the way I see it is we need to know as much as we can about this and research about blockchain and all that sort of thing, and how, and I guess just keep ahead of it, that we can then be a part of it rather than be scared of it, because that's the thing you don't want to be. You don't want to be going, oh, all these things are going to happen. You want to be going, this is exciting, and how do we actually become a part of it? And as you said, add value. So I guess that's something we're just going to have to learn as we go, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. Just think about, if this reality becomes the future, if this single blockchain entity becomes a reality, then what do you build on top of that? Yeah.
So it might be 10 years' time, do you think? The ones that are going, I might retire in 5.
Probably. Yeah, probably. I think within 5. So right now the technology is still maturing. The value of the market is like half $1 trillion, which is just well beyond what its real value is and what it actually provides to society. The cryptocurrency market, but I think within about 5 years it'll be mature to the point where it actually will be useful for doing anything, for all these ideas. And so I
mean, I think I'm not scared of it in the fact that I think it's exciting, and I think it's changing the industry and it's changing the world. So for me, I think it's just that's going to be our job, is to keep in sort of just see what's happening and how we can add value, and how it's going to change the real estate game, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's exciting, isn't it? Yeah.
Any other things you'd like to cover?
I think we've done a lot. I don't know.
Well, thanks Lisa and Nathan for joining us today, and I'm sure this will be the first of many videos that we do on this topic.
Yeah, I think it's great, like the Futurist. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you guys.